right, what's going on, YouTube? So one of my best friends called me the other day. He was like, "Yo, I think Adrian Granados has a good chance of pulling off the upset against Adrien Broner, right?" I really don't agree with that. I think it's gonna be a tough fight. I don't think it's an easy fight for Broner. I don't think it's easy, but I think is Broner has already fought these fights to prepare him for a fight like against Adrian Granados. You know what I'm saying? Like, Granados is tough. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. And you know what? If this fight were to happen 3-4 years ago, like maybe around when Broner moved up to 147, and he fought when he moved up and fought Paulie Malignaggi. If that fight happened then, like if this was his first fight moving up to 140 or 147, I think it would have been a tougher fight. All right, and we know he didn't go up to 140. He moved straight from 135 to 147. But I think that fight would have been tougher then, because I've said in older videos, I thought Broner lost to Ponce de Leon. I gave him like a point over Broner. It was a 10-round fight, and I think Ponce de Leon edged it back then, right? I think up to that point, that was his toughest fight. I thought up until he fought Maidana. All right, obviously he lost that fight, but Broner has fought enough fighters at this point to prepare him for a fight like this. This fight, Granados is not bringing anything that Broner hasn't seen at this point. Granados is good, but I'm not going to sit here and act like he's some kind of monster. I know what happened with the Amir Imam fight. I was shocked that happened, but I never really thought Amir Imam was that great to begin with. I thought he was one of the top guys at 140, but at that point, I didn't really think he was the best at 140. I thought there were several fighters better than Amir Imam. And Amir Imam really has never proven to be the best at 140. Not in my opinion. All right. But Granados is not that kind of monster, and Granados is a good fighter, but he's not Marcos Maidana. He's not Sean Porter. I think he's around the same level as Manuel Taylor. You might rate Granados a little better. You might rate Taylor a little better. I don't know, but I don't think this is going to be the fight where Broner gets exposed again or anything like that. I don't really look at it that way. I think if Broner, and you know what, if you look at Granados, like I was watching a little bit of the Felix Diaz fight with Adrian Granados, right? And this was a few years back. I was watching a little bit of that the other day, and listen, it was a tough fight. When you compare Broner to a guy like Felix Diaz, Broner doesn't use, he's pretty flat-footed. He's not going to be using the same lateral movement. He's going to be pretty much standing right in front of Adrian Granados. All right, he's going to be standing in front of him pretty much the whole time. Okay, but whether the fight is long range, mid range, close, if Broner's going to stay in the pocket, he's going to be fine dealing with someone like that. The only problem I have with Broner is his lack of activity. Okay, he's become such a pop shotter. When I see Broner fight a gritty, aggressive fight, like when he takes certain rounds and he's coming forward, all right, and he's walking you down, I think Broner is at his absolute best. But he only fights that way. 3, 4, 5 rounds out of the fight. 5, you're lucky if you get 5. Usually he's taking it easy. All right. If he were to step it up and become a front foot heavy, walking forward, walking you down type of fighter, I think Broner would be at his best. But he would have to step the volume up and everything. I think his defense is solid enough for him to fight that way. But he chooses to fight a more pop shotting style, which I don't think he's as good at. All right. But as far as stylistically in this fight, I think Adrien Granados is. I think Granados is a good style for him, that a style that he will be able to handle, no matter what. Because I've seen Granados use the lateral movement and move around. He's not like some come forward beast. He can switch it up. But I think his best chance of winning is getting close, getting on the inside, throwing the combinations, you know what I'm saying? I think that's his best shot. But Broner's style, he's fit to handle that kind of style. If you're going to be on the inside with Broner, you might outpunch him, you might outthrow him. But Broner's going to be landing the better shots, the more cleaner punches, the harder shots at that, in my opinion. And that's the way I see the fight is going to go. I think whatever way it goes, it might not be easy, especially because Broner does take breaks. But when Broner is on it, when Broner wins the rounds, they're gonna be clear rounds that he's gonna win. And I just don't think he would just be sitting there taking the amount of damage that Amir Imam took in that fight. Amir Imam was getting, when he in that fight, when Amir Imam was on the outside, utilizing his jab and using his lateral movement, he was doing okay. But once he started fighting Granados, once the fight got gritty and it got close range, and they were both on the inside, he was both in the pocket, I think Granados was taking the fight over. And Amir Imam's defense it wasn't there. It wasn't there at all. It didn't exist, that fight. He was getting hit by everything Granados was throwing, and Granados was throwing more shots, and it basically weared him down to where the fight got stopped. All right, did that fight get stopped? I think Amir Imam got stopped in that fight. So I think Broner will be able to handle that, being that he already went through that. He went into a really crazy fight with Marcos Maidana, a fight that we weren't expecting Maidana to win. Many of us wasn't expecting. Okay, for Maidana to just walk through him like the way he did. Broner had his moments. He started to come back a little bit when Maidana slowed down, and then Maidana knocked him down again, and then took the fight over again. So I think Broner is more than prepared for a fight like this. And if he's as focused as he seems to be, if you've been watching some of his videos, his training videos, you see that he's not, since he's got out of jail, he's kind of been changing a little bit. Okay, he seems to be very focused going into this fight. He seems a lot humble. I'm not saying he has to change. I mean, he could have the same personality. There's nothing wrong with talking and being flamboyant. But as far as the going out, the getting in trouble with the law and all that, I think he needs to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more disciplined or whatever. And I think he's doing that little by little. And I think he's going to do fine in this fight. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. I think Broner's going to win. I don't think he's going to knock Granados out. I'll be surprised if he do. But I don't think Broner's going to win or lose this fight. I think the fight at most could be a tough, close decision, at the worst. But I just don't see Broner losing a fight. Like losing a fight, nah. He should be able to win this fight. All right. It might get hard, might get heavy in certain rounds, but I think at the end of the day, Broner's going to win this fight, and I think it's going to be a unanimous, decision. I don't see it being like a split decision, majority decision. I think Broner's gonna win this fight unanimously, and that's it. All right, so let me know what you think. If you think I'm sleeping on Granados, let me know too. I mean, whatever, like I said, my boy called me. We were just having this conversation, and he thinks that Granados is gonna pull off the upset. I don't think that. I think Broner has done enough in his career to prepare him for fights like this. All right, so anyway, let me know what you think, and make sure you subscribe.